Hello and welcome to the making of the skirt for my 17th century man in the iron mask costume. I found this really nice fabric in a peachy ivory beigey sort of colours with petunia type flowers on it. They only had 7¼ meters left when I came to order, so I ordered the whole lot. I would have liked a lot more in my skirt, maybe an extra half or extra meter, but this is all they had left, so I've had to make do. Lucky me, I'm so short because I also need some for the bodice and the sleeves. Otherwise I would have been a bit stuck and had to look all over again. I bought the fabric, and this is what they've called it for a reference, from eBay. The company was called Textile Plaza. They also have a website as well, but as I said, unfortunately it's sold out now, so I don't know if they'll get any more in. But they do have a lot of other really stunning fabrics as well, so it might be worth checking them out. It's a brocade type fabric, but this is quite a thin brocade compared to others, but it still holds up pretty well, so I was quite happy with it. So we'll start off with the making.
This is the material we're going to be used. Now I'm going to be cutting it on a slope, and I'm just going to explain why I'm going to be cutting it at the top and not at the bottom. As you can see, this has a very uniform pattern to the fabric. If you were to gather up the waist line in a straight line, what would happen is that as you go further and further around the skirt, this is going to get higher and higher and higher. So what's going to happen with your pattern is that it will start to fall down onto a diagonal pattern, which we don't want. We want to keep the pattern straight all the way round. So this is how you'll do your measurements. These are for Tracy's measurements. This is the full width of our material, 6 meters. So what I've done is at the very centre front, I've measured up to just below Tracy's waist. I'm going to add extra inches because in case it's not long enough when it's finished, that would be a waste project. So I'm going to add 2 inches to my measurement at the bottom and another inch to my measurement at the top. This is the part where it starts to go underneath the bodice at the front, and this part here will be flat with no pleating. So then what I did, you have to be wearing your bum bag and your petticoat before you make these measurements. Then when you get to the side measurement, you're measuring from the waist over the bum bag to the floor, and again I've added another 2 inches to the bottom and another inch to the top to my measurement. Then right at the back, this is the centre back, we're going to use the whole width of the material, which is for this 148 centimetres or 58 inches. We're going to use the whole width. Okay, having folded our material in half, we're now at the centre front, and this is the fold. And I've already put pins in for the first part, which is a definite V shape, about 45 degrees. So when you come to cut it, it will be 6 centimetres for Tracy plus 1.5 centimetres for got a seam. So you're going to be coming up the first 7.5 centimetres at a 45-degree angle. And then you're going to start coming over the top, and then we've already pinned where our cut line is going to be. So the centre front measurements.
Okay, so we've now cut the fabric, and this is the centre front, and this is where the little V shape is, and I've cut it just above the pins because I want to overlock the edge.
On this rough piece of material, I'm going to explain to you what the centre front is going to look like. Now you have to imagine that this is going to be your finished skirt, and this is roughly the shape it's going to be when it's finished. It's going to start low at the front and it's going to end up higher on the sides. But the front section is going to be totally flat, so we don't want any cartridge pleating done in the middle. So what I need to do is to create first a liner piece in the shape of this V, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. So what I've done is that I know that the width of the centre bodice is approximately 6 centimetres. So that is how wide approximately we need the front flat piece to be before we start cartridge pleating up the side. I'm sure this will make sense as we get further on. So I'm going to cut a liner. So I'm first of all doing 2 diagonal cuts. This is where the cartridge pleating is going to start. So mark that there, and then do a 1.5 centimetre seam, and the same the other side, and just put little marks where the main parts are going to be. So put a mark there, and then by pulling this back we're going to measure just past the slit by 1.5 centimetres, past this seam, and another 1.5 centimetres there. So we're going to end up with this sort of pattern. That's where your slit is. That's the very centre front. So we're going to end up with a pattern like this. So I'm just going to cut this out. And this is what your liner looks like. Now it's been cut an exact V to match the V of the skirt.
Okay, so in the pink fabric here we've done our template for the V in the middle of the skirt. The next thing to do is to cut it to the same shape as our template for the V. The excess here on the sides will be the 1-inch turnover to do the cartridge pleating later on. Okay, so here we have the centre front of the skirt with the V. Now, we only got this V because I've skipped ahead a little bit and I started making a bodice. I've already done 2 bodices already to practice. So this is now a 3rd practice one I'm doing. So the only way we could get that distance is by measuring my mock-up so far. But I will be losing at least another 1.5 centimetres off this. So I've come up with the method I was going to do here, sorry. So this is the centre front with the spoon thing, and I decided to go for lining it this way eventually, so you can see in comparison how narrow the centre front will actually end up, because all this will be your seam allowance. So that's a really good helpful measurement to go by. So I would recommend doing that and just skipping ahead a little bit so you can know how much to cut off here. Okay, we're just making our facing. I'm making it out of a pink cotton to go to the inside, and the width of the facing is 5 centimetres. Okay, I've now sewn from this point about a centimetre in, down to here, and then up back to here. And the next thing I've got to do is just snip down the centre very, very carefully.
Now I'm going to show you how to neaten up inside the facing that you just put in. Pleating across the top of your skirt will be turned in about 1 inch. So you've got a little bit left over here. So where your facing goes a bit too far, you can actually turn that under now and then lay it flat like so, and you can just hand sew that down. I'll just show you again on this side. I've got some pins in here. Okay, so this is the turnover for your cartridge pleating, and you got a little bit extra, but don't worry about that. Turn the seam of your facing, then turn the whole thing diagonally across and pin that down, and then you can hand sew down there. And if you want to, you can put like a catch stitch right at the end here so your facing doesn't keep coming up.
Okay, so we are skipping along here a little bit. So I left my example over here, didn't I? Right. What we are doing is a very specific type of pleating called cartridge pleats. Hence they stand up rather than lie flat. You'll see some things on your curtains if you look at the way they fold. It's a very specific way of pleating. So you can see here I've got the centre front of my skirt with the facing we did earlier. Now I already know my measurements because I've practiced this, but basically cartridge pleats start 1/4 of an inch in from the top edge. So you can see there, and I'm not that with, you can just see the dot there. So I need to turn this in 1 1/4 inches. So you can see this would be the outside of my skirt. This is the inside. So I've had to turn the whole piece 1/4, 1 1/4 inches, sorry, all the way along. And I pinned it and then I ironed it flat. So you have a nice crisp edge. Then what I did is painstakingly, I could have drawn a line here if I wanted to, but instead I went for making my quarter-way in line with pins. So everywhere is a pin is about a quarter-way up from the top of the edge. Sorry, it's not very good at focusing, this camera. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. So each dot is a quarter-way in. Now, cartridge pleating, you sew along. So I already worked out that I wanted my dots 1 centimetre apart going along from left to right or right to left, but I'd say start from the centre is the best way. And I worked that out, that having the the spacing less between the dots means that the thickness of your cartridge pleats won't be as too chunky. But if you have your dots further apart, which I trialled first, you suddenly end up with a big chunky edge and you have a waistband to turn over that on the end. So I figured out if I go less, then it's not so much to make the width of it too chunky. I did try 0.5 centimetres, but then it's basically you haven't got a cartridge pleat anymore, so as I said, no less than 1 centimetre. And that's just the first row. So then I have to do another row, and that other row has to line up with the first dot in a straight line at exactly the same point, except I've made this 2 centimetre gap between the top and the bottom dot there. I hope you're with me so far. As I say, this is a very precise way of pleating because all the dots have to be the same distance going that way or that way, whichever you look at it, and they all have to line up in a row going that way or that way. So now I've done that, I have then, I've already done this, got this prepared. Excuse me, it might take me a while to find it. But basically you don't want to, like gathering, you don't want to gather it all in one go because you can risk many bad things happening and your thread snapping. So I folded it from the centre, getting the very end of the skirt, folded that in half. I then took the quarter way point between that half, I've marked it with a pin going that way. I then quartered the rest of it as well, so I will be gathering from there round all this to about there, then stopping and then starting on the next piece. So I'm doing it in little sections. Never ever gather in one go, unless it's a very small piece you've got to do, or the end of a sleeve. But on this scale, say no, don't do it. Okay, right. Okay, let's start. I've now skipped ahead and gathered all my skirt edge on the 2 rows that I explained just a moment ago. I'm using a thicker thread, it's called a top stitching thread. It's colour number 169 in Guttama. And I've bought 2 reels of 30 metres, so I think now I might not have needed that much, but I had to account for the sleeve as well, but never mind. So I've run my 2 rows of stitching all the way to the quarter points as just pointed out previously. So it will be gathered in quarter sections along each side from the centre front. I'm using a thicker needle for this as well. It's because it's a thicker thread, you need a wider eye. So it's not a sharp needle, but it's what I had hanging around and it worked quite well. Okay, we're just pulling up the gathers and we just need to tie up the ends, but we're not doing a knot, we're sewing down and anchoring each point like so. Okay, now it's time to put the tape onto the skirt. I'm using this herringbone tape and it's approximately 2.5 centimetres wide, and you need to make it just a bit longer than your skirt so you can turn the edging towards the back and sew that down. I've overlocked the edge of the ribbon just so it stops fraying because it likes to fray, and very gently just pinned it to the outside of the skirt here, and then the same again the other side, just left a little bit to turn towards the inside. So I'm going to do that first and just get that tidied up and turned inside, and then I'll show you the next part. I've now made a start on attaching the band. So you can see here that, I don't know if this is going to turn out very well, but I'm just going in and out of the pleats closest to the band. So I'm doing one and then going right in at the very top edge, taking a bit of the waistband and going through the middle of the pleat. I'm just opening it up carefully, you can see, like so. And every now and then I just do an extra one because this band has to hold a lot of weight. So now I did try earlier just doing every second one, but it doesn't work. You get lots of clumpy bits, so it has to be every single one. And as I say, remember the pleat closest to the band. Don't go through there and right out to the other side there. That's not right. Just trying to hold these up straight as you go. And it's very important that you hold them up straight or they will be lopsided later on. And then, okay, so I've sewn on the band to the front, and the next thing we want to do is turn it over to the back of the skirt really tight. So pull it right over. Then just pop some pins on just it now. Now you can see I'm just at the end here, so we'll just turn that over, pull that down. And then that's what it should look like. Okay, so I'm just starting to hold down the band to the back of the skirt, and I'm just pulling it over pretty tight, and I'm just catching a bit of the pleat and pulling the band to it. You do have to hold it quite tight. And I'll do this all the way around the skirt, and then it should look like this. The last thing I've done is attached some ties onto the end of the skirt band here, one on each one, for tying around the back. And that more or less now finishes the skirt. Okay, so I've just put it on here under the bum roll that I made in the other video tutorial. And you can just have a quick look just to see what it looks like at this point. Thank you very much for watching, and see my website Tracy's Costuming World for more written tutorials and photographs.